All right, so next presentation is from Himani Java. She is a formal verification engineer at Intel. Himani has 5+ years of work experience in semiconductor industry. Currently at Intel, she is working on formally verifying complex IPs of cutting edge technologies. Prior to this was with Western Digital, involved in verification of NAND memory blocks using SV and formal methodologies. So let's welcome Himani.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm part of FECTO team in Intel. So today I'm going to talk about exhaustive validation of a cache memory controller using formal methodology and formal techniques in order to verify the performing and the timing requirements. So lately we have seen that the design complexity actually has gone very up. And because of the design complexity, the verification challenges too have significantly increased. Because of the design complexity and the verification challenges, we have seen there are a lot of performance issues. So each performance issue can actually lead to a revision in a project. So I think we all know that each revision can cost $1,000? No. $1,000,000? No. It can actually cost billions of dollars to the company. So in a complex design such as cache memory controller, so where the process actually sends multiple requests to the cache memory, so the complexity is huge because the scheduling of the request and the timing complexity is more. So the timing actually should have a proper specification, and all the requests should be scheduled in a proper and timely manner in order to make sure that there are no misses in the cache memory. So violation of any rule or any timing requirement can actually lead to a performance setback. So this is where actually formal verification comes into picture. So we have already discussed that how formal verification, is an exhaustive verification and how it can cover the whole input space. So using formal methodology and formal techniques, we were able to actually catch a lot of issues, complex hidden bugs, which if not caught would have actually resulted in huge performance loss. So the agenda of this presentation, I'll be going over the cache basics, performance of a cache memory controller. So what were the challenges while verifying the performance of the cache memory controller? And then how did we use formal methodology and formal techniques in order to make sure that we resolve all these challenges? Then at the end, I'm going to talk about the results, and then finally I'll conclude the presentation. Cache basics. So what exactly is a cache memory? Cache memory is a local memory which sits between a processor and the main memory, right? So it stores data and instructions which are frequently used by the processor. So in order to make sure that the processor doesn't have to go to the main memory every time it requests for a particular data, cache memory controller is actually a block which handles the transfer of data between the processor, the main memory, and the cache memory. So it actually copies the data from the main memory in cache memory in order to again make sure that the data retrieval performance is more. The processor is not going to the main memory every time it needs a specific data, or it needs to access a specific data. So we have two possible cases. So either the requested data from the processor can be present in the cache memory, or it might not be present. So let's say it is present in the cache memory, then that is what is called a hit. And if the information or the data which the processor actually requested for is not present, then we call it as a miss. So the cache controller also helps to fetch the information from the main memory and updates the cache in case there is a miss. So what exactly do we mean by performance of a cache memory controller? So a cache's primary purpose. What exactly is cache memory used for? So it is used to increase the data retrieval performance basically. So there are multiple ways in which we can actually measure the performance of a cache memory controller. But here we are going to talk about two such metrics called the hit ratio and the average access time. So basically the hit ratio is the number of hits to the total accesses to the cache memory. Average access time on the other hand is dependent on the hit time, that is the hit rate multiplied by the time required to actually access the data from the cache memory. So that is when we have a hit. It also includes the miss time. What exactly is miss time? So let's say if we have a miss in the cache memory, then the processor actually goes to the main memory and there is an extra delay. So which is given by the miss rate into miss penalty. So performance improvement actually aims for a good hit ratio. So obviously we have a local or the cache memory in between. So obviously we would want that there are maximum number of hits and the miss rate should be low in order to make sure that the performance of a cache controller goes up. So if we see both the metrics are actually dependent on the miss rate. So we need to make sure to minimize a miss rate as low as possible. So the miss rate should be as low as possible. So basically in a cache memory controller, what we focused was or what we validated was more on a data scheduler side. So a miss can happen due to multiple reasons. But what we are going to focus on is on the request scheduling part. So request, let's say the request to the cache memory is dropped. Right? So the request doesn't even reach the cache memory, so the processor can't even retrieve the data from the cache. But let's say we have some data integrity issues in the cache itself. So the processor requested for one particular data, however, it gets another data. So that is what we call that there is a mismatch in the data. So if you see in this diagram, right? So we have a cache memory controller, and it interacts with the core, or we can call it as a processor or a lower level cache. So we have a tag controller, a data scheduler, a data propagation mux, and a data array. Okay? So tag controller is basically responsible to check if there was a miss or a hit. So tag controller actually compares the tag bits which comes along with the requested with the request, and it compares those tag widths with the cache. So if the address is matching, then that means that is a hit. And let's say if that particular address is not present in the cache memory, then we call it as a miss. So based on the miss and hit information, the tag controller actually sends further requests to the data scheduler. Data scheduler is a block which is actually responsible to schedule the request. So it makes sure that no two requests actually overlap each other or the requests don't get dropped. So it makes sure basically the data integrity is maintained. So next, after the request is scheduled from the data scheduler, it's forwarded to the data propagation mux. So data propagation mux actually interacts with the cache memory directly. So this data propagation mux actually duplicates each request coming from the data scheduler. So I'm going to talk more about data propagation mux maybe in the further slides. So as we have already talked about, what are the performance challenges? So we need to make sure that the requests are scheduled in a timely manner and they follow a correct timing specification, which actually further will make sure that there is no data corruption, there is no data loss, and then whatever the processor actually requested for, it is able to retrieve it in a shortest time possible. So normally in a cache memory controller, the size of the cache memory is too huge. So in case, we want to see a particular location in a cache memory, we can see it using a subdivided location basically. A huge cache memory is divided into multiple slices. Each slice is further divided into multiple data blocks, and each data block is further divided into multiple subarrays. So we need to make sure the requests which are scheduled follow a strict timing specification for each location. So as the size of the cache memory increases, the timing complexity also goes up. So request scheduling. So basically in our case, the request scheduling was dependent on three major requirements. The first one is scheduling requests based on minimum timing constraints. Second one is avoiding request scheduling as per configurable single clock rules. Third one is request duplication based on data block timing specification. So in the further slides, I'm going to talk about each one of them and what each requirement actually means. Scheduling requests based on minimum timing constraints. So what this exactly means is that any request followed by any other request for a particular location should happen only after a certain minimum number of cycles. There should be a cycle gap between two requests which are trying to access the same location. So if we see in this particular snapshot, right, these are certain rules actually. So if we see write to write for the same different slide should only occur minimum after 2 clock cycles. Similarly, read to read for a same slice but a different data block should occur after minimum of 4 cycles. So this is just a example and a visual representation that read 0. So we have read 0 and read 1 for 2 different slices, and they should come minimum after 2 cycles. So these are just the explanation of rules which is presented in this graphical manner. Second is avoiding request scheduling as per configurable single clock rules. So what exactly this means is the repeated memory access to a specific location is blocked or is avoided at specific cycles after an initial access. A second request should not be scheduled at some specific cycles after the first request. So these rules actually can be configured using configurable registers. So why normally the blocking happens is due to power up related issues. So generally before the data block actually receives any read or write request, it should be fully powered up. And each data block actually takes certain number of cycles to get powered up. So there can be multiple other reasons as well to have such strict timing requirements. So this is another example where we have a write to write same slice. This is a configurable register. So based on this value actually, the second write won't appear after at the first, third, fourth and fifth cycles after a write on the same slice. So if you see the value of this configurable register, right? So it's 11101. So the second write is actually blocked at the first, third, fourth and fifth cycles after a write on the same slice. So if you see from this graph, right? So we have a write 0 on cycle 1. In the next cycle, the write is blocked. The write can come 2 cycles after, or from the graph we can see it can come at the third cycle. And then again it is blocked at the fourth, fifth and sixth. So moving on, the third is request duplication based on data block timing specification. So as earlier I talked, right? So the request from the data scheduler actually propagates to the data propagation mux. So the data propagation mux duplicates each request coming from the data scheduler. And why is that? Each data block actually is divided into 2 half data blocks. The left half data block and the right half data block. So because of the 2 half data blocks, the data propagation mux actually creates 1 request for each half DB. So now in addition to scheduling the request itself have got duplicated for the half DBs. So the complexity increases even more further because now we need to make sure that the duplicated requests don't overlap each other. So we are going to see this in the next example. So if you see, the specification says read after read for same slice should be scheduled minimum after 4 cycles, right? So let's say the second read actually comes at the second cycle. Then what happens? If you see here, we have RD0, which is coming from the data scheduler, and then we have RD1. And if you see, the RD0 request is actually getting duplicated. For first half, that is half 0, and then for the second half, half 1. So if you see here, the RD1 is actually getting overlapped with the second duplicated request. So we need to make sure that the read after read for same slice occurs only minimum after 4 cycles. So this is now where formal actually comes to our rescue. So we discussed about different types of rules and different types of requests. So the total number of combinations for each location are exceptional. So therefore, we use formal methodology in comparison to dynamic simulation, which we have already talked that it is a random test-based approach, and then even if 1,000 vectors are written, it might not cover the whole input design space. However, formal on the other side actually covers the whole input design space, and then bug escape in formal verification is very, very, very hard. So we have used this methodology on a higher level cache, basically, higher level cache memory controller IP in our recent project. So what exactly this methodology is? So I talked about 3 different requirements. That is the minimum timing constraints. Second is avoiding request scheduling as per the configurable clock rules. The third is request duplication based on the data block timing specification. So for all these 3 requirements, we had our FE modeling and checkers written. So the checker modeling obviously was little different for each of the requirements. So in stage 1A, stage 1B, stage 1C. So we have our FE modeling and checkers being written. So, and all these checkers are actually run in FPV. So let's say all the checkers pass. So that means yes, our timing requirement is being met. But however, let's say if there is a checker which is failing, that means either, obviously it could be a design bug or there might be some issue in our formal test bench as well. So in case our FE environment is, already mature, then if a checker is failing, that means that it is a design bug and we need to report it. So we talked about minimum timing constraint. So let's say we take an example of read after read for the same slice should happen minimum after 4 clock cycles. And our checker, verifies that okay, read after read, the second read is actually not coming before 4 cycles. But is that enough? Have we actually, met the best performance? No. Why? Because the second read, okay, the checker verified it's not coming before 4 cycles, but when exactly it is coming? Is it exactly coming at the 4th cycle? Maybe, maybe not. So therefore, we move to the second stage to actually confirm, do we have the best performance or we are just meeting, the specification which was given by the architect. So therefore, in stage 2, we write targeted covers. We write that the second read, is it coming at cycle 4? If not, then that means we don't have the best possible performance met, right? In case the cover passes, only then we can say, yes, we have the best possible performance for that particular criteria, basically. So what happens if the cover fails? So that means, the second read can come at the 5th cycle or at the 10th cycle or maybe at the 100th cycle, we don't know. So what is the approach to actually, find the minimum possible cycle at which the second read actually occurs? So therefore we move to stage 3 where we use ranged covers. So what are ranged covers? Ranged covers are nothing but, ranged covers actually give the earliest occurrence of an event within a range of particular cycles. Okay, so which the range covers, so let's say I give within 5 to 30 where does my second read come? So this actually 5 to 30 is my range. So which will actually give me, it might fail or it might pass. So if it passes, that means, so let's say the read which was supposed to come at the 4th cycle, let's say it is coming at the 16th cycle, right? So the range cover will actually be able to find out the minimum possible cycle at which the second read is coming. Okay? But again, if you see the read which was scheduled at the 4th cycle, should have come at the 4th cycle, is coming at the 16th. So if you see here, there is almost a 75% loss in performance, right? So even this, even though our checkers are passing, using the help of range covers, we were able to find what exactly is causing the performance loss. And let's say the range cover actually fail. So we need to again update the range and then rerun it again. So let's say between 5th to 30th, it doesn't occur. So maybe then we'll say, okay, tell us from 30th to 60 maybe. Then obviously we'll update our range and then we'll rerun and see where the minimum possible, what is the minimum possible cycle at which the second read or the second request is coming. So I've already talked about the different stages. So I'll just go over it very quickly. So in stage 1, we had assertions and checker modeling for the 3 requirements that I already talked: minimum timing constraint, single clock rules, and data block timing spec. So in case assertion fails, we report it as a bug. And in case the assertion passes, that doesn't mean that we have found our best possible performance. Then we move forward to stage 2 in order to find the best possible performance, right? So in stage 2, we write targeted covers, and then in case the cover passes, then yes, we can say for that particular criteria, we have found the best performance actually. And if cover fails, then we move to stage 3. So in stage 3, we use range covers. So for our case, the range covers were not converging for us during stage 3. So therefore, we use abstractions in order to decrease the design complexity. So abstractions, obviously, it can be used at any of the 3 stages I talked. Because we were facing issues during range covers, therefore we applied abstractions during this stage. So I'm going to talk about exactly what abstractions are in the further slides. So in case a range cover passes, then we actually give feedback to the architects and tell them, yes, we have some performance loss which needs to be improved. And in case a range cover fails, then we update the range cover and then rerun it again. So FE methodology techniques. So since we are using assertions, so there can be different types of assertion modeling which can actually cater to different types of requirements we have. So first is logical expression based. So these are very direct properties, and these are of least complexity in terms of both code size and the number of flops generated. So if you see here, one such example is given. So write and read to the same location shouldn't come at the same time. Obviously, read and write for same location can't happen simultaneously. Then we have some assertions which are modeled with additional logic. So mainly to check our minimum timing constraints, we had also model counters along with it, along with the assertions, in order to make sure that the assertion modeling is complete. Covers. So we had written target covers in order to minimize the design space, which targeted covers actually cater to the specific design requirements, and mainly we use it for minimum timing constraint. So range covers were used to find out the earliest occurrence of an event within a range of clock cycles. So this is basically more of a divide and conquer strategy. So normally when a cover fails, it's difficult to visualize that waveform. So in case if we have given the range, then in case it passes, then we can see and observe the waveform and give the feedback to the designers. Okay, what what is the issue in the logic? So we see this example. So we have a cover property, direct cover we have written that write to write should happen, in 16 cycles. In case that cover fails, we have a second example where we actually give the range that write to write for same array should come between 16 to 20 cycles. So abstractions. So as the design size increases, the state space increases exponentially. And it was, difficult for us to converge on some of the cover properties. So that is why we use abstractions here. So what exactly abstraction is? Abstraction is replacing a complex logic in your design with a much more simpler one, but with a similar functionality. So we have different types of abstractions like init value abstraction, counter abstraction. So depending on your usage, you can choose which one to use. And then it actually simplifies a formal analysis process for the tool. So using the abstractions, we were actually able to achieve convergence for the range covers very quickly. So the time complexity reduced by 99% for us. So if you see this diagram, right? So this state, 16 state, so the search space without abstraction model, it would have been very difficult for us to cover. So it is outside of whatever we are covering right now. We were getting the bounded proof. And with the abstraction model, the convergence we were able to achieve, within few minutes. So results and bug scenario. So using this innovative approach, we were able to actually catch more than 20 bugs. And then we were successfully able to validate all the timing requirements. We were able to, catch or find design areas which were actually leading to performance loss using covers and range covers. And then several bottlenecks were found, and then feedback was given to the architects, and then based on that feedback, some design changes happened. So this is one bug scenario. So normally what was expected was that a write to a write should be, blocked at the first, third, fourth, and fifth cycle. So what was expected was that 2 writes every 8 cycles. However, since, there was a bug in design, what was happening was 2 writes every 12 cycles. So if you see here, instead of getting 2 writes every 8 cycles, we were getting it every 12 cycles. So which resulted in a 33% loss in the write bandwidth. So this is one scenario where, if the bug was not caught, then it would have actually led to the performance loss in terms of the write bandwidth. Conclusion. So we have presented a comprehensive methodology which can actually validate all kinds of, performance challenges of a cache memory controller. And then we were able to find several bottlenecks, and then we were able to give feedback to the designers in order to improve the design architecture. So the formal actually speeds up the validation process and gives us high ROI. So in case, the same methodology is applied to all such requirements, then it can actually multiply the benefits and give us better designs with better performance. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Himani, for decluttering the cache verification using formal. Questions for Himani?
Hi. You mentioned that you have used abstractions in verifying cache memory controller, right? I wanted to understand how did you use it?
So basically we found, so obviously our range covers were not converging. So that was because of a design complexity in our design. Right? So we found out which was a part of the logic which was actually complex and was not letting the covers actually converge. So we added a cut point to the output of that complex logic, and because it has a cut point, then it becomes a free variable. So basically, and then we added constraints to it so that it works in the similar way like it was working before. So it actually reduced the design complexity, and we were able to converge, within minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other question? Thanks, Himani. May I request Shobana to present the certificate?
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.